welcome to the School of Speech podcast, presented by SpeechTherapyPD.com. School of Speech is designed specifically for the school-based SLP to come together to discuss current topics, tackle difficult situations, and share our insights. Our goal is to bolster confidence, celebrate our triumphs, and foster a community dedicated to the excellence in the school setting. Hello and welcome everybody. I am Carolyn Dolby, your SpeechTherapyPD.com podcast host for School of Speech. School of Speech is designed for school-based SLPs so we can come together and explore current trends. We're going to be sharing insights and really champion our expertise. Our goal is to boost our confidence, celebrate our triumphs, and just foster a community dedicated to the excellence in the school setting. I am so excited about today's episode, which is AAC in action, from feature matching to trials to implementation. And what a blessing to have Kathryn, I'm going to do this, D'Agostino Russo. I did it so well before.
You got it.
Thank you, Kate. You are here to guide us as we put AAC in action. She is going to be sharing her expertise, starting with who benefits from AAC, and will lead us through the assessment and implementation process. She'll be describing feature matching and what you need to consider what is wrong when choosing AAC systems. We're going to learn about dynamic assessment tools for planning intervention, and also discuss how we can involve school team members and also caregivers throughout the entire process. Now, before we get started, I do have a little bit of housekeeping to go over. So each of these episodes are 60 minutes and will be offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs. I need to go over our disclosures. So I'm going to let you guys keep jumping in on that chat, please. All right. Ms. Russo is an employee of New York City Public Schools. She's also receiving an honorarium from SpeechTherapyPD.com for her participation in this episode today. For non-financial, she is ASHA SIG 12 affiliate and a member of SIG 12 Professional Development Committee. For me, I receive a salary as a district level specialized support clinician for Cy-Fair Independent School District. I'm also compensated for my graduate courses I teach at the University of Houston, and I am a consultant for school districts across the nation supporting their program development and staff training. I also receive compensation from SpeechTherapyPD.com for hosting this podcast. Non-financial, I'm a member of the Texas Speech and Hearing Feeding and Swallowing Task Force. I'm a volunteer for Feeding Matters, and I'm a member of ASHA's Special Interest Groups 13 and 16. All right. Well, I want to keep coming in those chats, because while you're doing that, I want us to get to know Kate a little bit more. I did just say that she works for New York City Public Schools. She's a speech language pathologist and an assistive technology evaluator. After receiving her bachelor's and master's degree in speech language pathology from oh my goodness, Kate, what is wrong with me? University of Maryland, I know, speech path needs help. She began working in special education schools with early elementary age students who use a variety of augmentative alternative communication systems, and including alternative access. Kate has been interested in AAC since her undergrad studies and has developed her passion for alternative access as a very early professional. Welcome, Kate. Yay. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about AAC with everybody tonight.
I love it. Would you mind? Let's just get started. Tell us how you got on this journey for your love and you became such an amazing person with AAC. What's your journey?
So actually, I first learned what AAC was in my undergraduate studies. So if you don't know, AAC stands for Augmentative Alternative Communication. And before I was in undergrad, I had never heard of this before. I knew I wanted to be a speech pathologist, and I knew I wanted to work with people with various disabilities. I really wanted to work in a special education setting, but I didn't even know this existed until I had to go and do those observation hours that we all have to do, the 25 hours. So I went to a special education school. I was scheduled to do 1 hour of observation, and I ended up skipping my classes for the day. The speech therapist was such a wonderful woman. She let me stay the entire day and learn about all of the devices, see people using eye gaze, and explain to me that speech language pathology doesn't just deal with speech. I think when people hear that we're speech pathologists, they think, oh, you work with people who have lisps, you work with people who can't say their R's, but we work with so many different things. And one of those things is helping people who communicate differently find a communication toolbox. So after that, I wrote every paper about AAC. When I went to graduate school, I said, I need to have an internship that's all AAC. This is what I want to do. And I was very lucky. Loyola University, Maryland really helped me find the types of internships that I wanted. And then I just really started searching out career opportunities where I could practice those skills. And I took a lot of continuing education courses and things like that. And by no means do I consider myself an expert. I think I'm just somebody who's very excited about AAC. So I'm always trying to learn more and share that excitement and enthusiasm with other professionals so that we can do the very best for the clients that we serve.
Wow. All right. So I was just going through the chat and I'm noticing everyone's really averaged about a 3. So everybody's, yeah. So and the heavy hitter, what people are really wanting to know more about, which I think comes to no surprise, like how do we keep the AAC device out of the backpack? How do we make sure that we get the buy-in from the staff? Another good one, how do we train the parents and the staff to make sure they're using it correctly? And also trialing, oh yeah, there was one about trialing AAC devices when they're bilingual. I don't know if we could touch on that. Okay.
Definitely,
Perfect.
definitely.
All right. All right. Well,
So where would you like me to start?
I know, right? I'm like, where do we go? Well, who benefits from AAC? I know I already asked you that question.
Well, this is a great question because people ask me all the time. So a little background, I have 3 days of the week as a treating therapist. So I have a caseload, and the other 2 days of the week, I support teams across the city doing a AAC evaluation. So I support them in choosing what programs to trial, teaching them some techniques to use during the trial process, and then helping discuss what they think is working and not working. So we'll talk a little bit about those feature matchings and what I'm looking for and, recommending people look for. But a lot of times when I go in, people will say, oh, somebody on the team mentioned we should look into AAC, but I don't know if they're a candidate. But the thing I have to say to them is everyone is a candidate for AAC. Everyone can benefit from AAC, and we all actually use some augmentative or alternative communication supports every single day, whether or not we are communicators who primarily use speech and mouth words. So think about how sometimes we choose not to call a person. We think it's easier to send a text or an email. Or maybe we send an emoji to say that we like that idea for dinner. Also, sometimes you might go out to a restaurant and just point, hey, I think I want that milkshake. That one in the picture looks great. These are all different methods that we're using. So that's a good example that you can say to people on your team, either caregivers or school staff who might not think that AAC is appropriate for everyone. And then when we're talking about AAC and who might benefit, we need to think about how our students or older adults are communicating and what they're communicating about, and are they able to communicate efficiently and spontaneously in every situation that they might have. So some of these people might use speech, but maybe they are not very intelligible. So having AAC will help them when there's those communication breakdowns. Or maybe they struggle to communicate with unfamiliar people. In that case, AAC might help in providing a communication context. Maybe the pictures are helpful for both people. And then also keeping in mind that AAC can really support receptive language as well. Even for my students who primarily use speech, I always have AAC supports available for them to explore. And then I'm always modeling on it so that it's almost like a visual that they can see what concepts we're talking about and how I'm, putting words together so they can see almost like a sentence strip. They see the visual in that way.
I love that. I love the part that you blew my mind for a minute when I realized that we're all using AAC when you said when we use emojis. When we go somewhere, or maybe we just point and the other person knows what we're wanting and we just communicated. Sometimes it's just, I think teachers and parents too need to know that AAC is for everybody, because I do know that sometimes we get some pushback from parents that feel that AAC will keep them from being verbal communicators. But
Right.
just bringing out the point that, hey, you use AAC daily and you still are a very good, efficient oral communicator. I think that was powerful.
Right. And that's an important thing. You brought up that myth. I think it's up to all of us to keep busting that myth that using AAC will prevent speech. There are so many studies that are proving otherwise. And then also for some of our students who may eventually use speech, you can also phrase it to parents like, this is going to help their receptive language. We are teaching them so much vocabulary so that when they choose whatever modality they want to use, they already know the words. They already have some words that they can use, whether it is through speech or their communication system, like a speech generating device or picture supports. We don't want to leave that receptive language and learning vocabulary in the dust, because while we're trying to figure out which system they want to use. And I also like to tell people it's a communication toolbox. We all use so many tools during the day. If you're going to, I don't know, build something, you're going to use a screwdriver, a hammer, for all sorts of different things. So we want to make sure that we have a good gestural system, good facial expressions, good AAC in any type, whether it's high tech or low tech. Just try something and see where it goes.
Well, I think that really leads into my question on, well, how do you know what application or system to trial? I mean, there's a lot out there. What do you do? What do you need to consider?
Yes, so definitely you want to be considering feature matching. So if you're not familiar with that, it is a term coined by Shane and Costello, where basically you're matching the features of an AAC system to the strengths and needs of the student. So what things are built into a program that will maximize their current abilities and then support them where they need a little extra help. So things that you want to be thinking about are vocabulary organization, what languages are supported, what symbol types are there, access methods if the person may have difficulty using their hands. You might look at positioning and some other settings. So for example, thinking about vocab organization, there are so many different types of organizations. Like you might have visual scenes, which is a picture with language concepts embedded. And a lot of programs now do have visual scene displays built in. You just have to go through the grid. You might have schematic or activity-based programs where the words are related to a specific situation. So, you go to the page for bubbles and you have all your top phrases and words about bubbles. You might have a taxonomic or categorical one where your base is core, but then the fringe is organized into categories. That's really great if the person you're working with has a solid categorical knowledge already. That might be very easy for them. A linguistic vocabulary organization is when the words are organized by the part of speech, semantic relations, how the words go together, and motor planning, which sometimes people, I think, say programs that have a strong motor planning base seem to be more difficult, but we all rely on motor planning, especially people with disabilities. So you always want to keep motor planning in mind, even if the core vocabulary organization of the program is not motor planning. Just keeping that in mind, that words stay consistent. You might also have topical organization where the vocabulary is organized based on conversational topics. So it might be a little bit more phrase-based. And then a lot of the programs nowadays have a mix of all of these. So you'll be able to find a little bit of each. And then, like I said, you'll also think of languages. If your student is bilingual, you obviously want to try to the best of your abilities to find a program that has both languages. And these are expanding every day, but sometimes you just can't find one. Some of the programs will translate using Google Translate. You can translate the board easily that way, but sometimes a language is just not supported, in which case you can talk with the family about finding somebody to help you translate the board, and maybe it'll end up being light tech, but that's better than nothing. But as always, if you are able to find the language, like Spanish, French tend to be on most programs. Chinese is becoming more readily available. Some programs also have Danish and German and Japanese. So checking that out. Access methods is huge. So, if you know that visual skills are a strength for an individual who's not able to use their hands very well, definitely consider a program that supports eye gaze, and that you're going to be looking more at a dedicated device that has that access method. If you don't have the ability to maintain the pressure on a switch, but you're looking at switch scanning, you might look at a different type of switch. And then, thinking about what the person's diagnosis is. We never really want to focus on the diagnosis, but that can really help you. Like, do you need to be thinking about a different access method down the road? Do you need to be thinking about multiple access methods so that they're always able to access it? And then, what settings can you play with, like dwell time, background color? Can you change the grid size and things like that? And then, just playing around with the different programs that are out there, going on YouTube and watching videos of people playing with the different vocabularies, or even on the manufacturer websites, you can get so many webinars about the specific products. And that's a great way to learn what features are available. And then if you're ever not sure, you can always call in the area rep for one of the programs. They would love to come and help you and show off what they have. And it's a great way to learn hands-on what's available in the different devices.
I like that. What I liked when you started out, you immediately said, when you're going to feature match, you need to start with their strengths and then their. I like the way that I think we're going towards, we really want to be strength-based in everything we're doing. What is the strength of the child? I think that was powerful. Thank you for adding that.
Of course, because you want to make it successful for the kid or the adult. You don't want them to feel like first off, it's hard. They're learning a new thing. So it is going to be hard, but you don't want to make it so hard that they're not excited about trying it out. So trying to find something that hooks them in and makes it easy for them because of their strengths is a great way to get them excited about AAC.
Absolutely. And I missed one question, not a question, but if we can put in Gestalt language processors and AAC too, if you have any little tips for us on that, would be great too.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on out there. Everyone's kind of talking about it, but I would say the main thing that you want to think about when using AAC with anybody, whether they're an analytical processor or a Gestalt language processor, is thinking about the communicative competence model. So that was developed by Janice Light, and it looks at social competence, linguistic competence, operational competence, strategic competence, and now we're starting to also include the psychosocial competence. So thinking about if the person is a Gestalt communicator, thinking about what competence the Gestalt is serving. So is it a linguistic thing? Is it so they can interact socially? And then working to make sure that they have efficient ways to communicate across all the competencies. So there's not a lot of solid research out there yet about, what we should be doing in terms of programming a device. But I think the main thing that we should focus on is how can we make somebody competent and support them across all the competence areas, and making sure they're able to communicate for all the functions, to repair communication breakdowns, et cetera, whether that's using a Gestalt or, a more traditional analytic where you're putting words together.
Gotcha. Yeah, we do had a question come in. I know that that we both agree that everyone would benefit from AAC because we all are using it. But the question is there a main population that really benefits from from AAC systems?
I wouldn't say there's a main population, but I will say that the sooner you can start using AAC with a person, the more likely they are to become a more competent user, to use it long term and not abandon it. So if for any reason you feel like somebody just needs a little extra support, introduce some kind of AAC. And it could just be a light tech board. You could print the home pages of so many of the devices that are out there, and you can use that. You could go on Project Core, and Project Core's website has tons of free boards based on like a 36 universal core words, and they have them set up in different ways. But anyone that you think that it will enhance their ability to participate in their community, with their family, in their school, in their home activities or their community activities, definitely consider AAC for them.
I'm going to pop that. I just put Project Core in just to see what it is.
Sure.
And make sure that people see that. So it was Project Project Core. And if you put that
yes,
in, it takes you right to it. But I'm going to put it in the chat as well.
And that's developed by some researchers at UNC. And there's also some great learning modules on there. Sometimes I'll send them to caregivers or other support staff because it's a great way to learn about core words and the importance of teaching and using them, and also some of the implementation strategies that we all talk about till we're blue in the face. And sometimes hearing it from a different person can help these people understand and use the technique a little bit better.
Perfect. How do you determine what system is going to be the best fit?
Sure. So typically during a trial period, you've already looked at all of the different features of the different programs and thought, okay, I'm going to try something with motor planning because they have some really good routines and patterns that they pick up on very quickly, but they do have a good categorical knowledge. So I do want to try something with categories, and I want to make sure, say they're bilingual in Spanish. I want to make sure that both are available. What I might do is narrow it down to 2, maybe 3 programs, and then we start trialing. I just take my best guess and I stick with it for a few sessions, and it kind of is up to the way your sessions are run and how often you see the child, and what the classroom is able to do and how your school system or private practice or facility works. But something that helps me, and I've told other people, is you can do it 2 ways. You can, pick, I'm going to use program 1 for X amount of time, and I'm going to be looking at all this data. Are they using it to request, comment, protest, ask questions? How much support do they need? Do they need gestures? Are they able to navigate 2 or 3 hits by themselves? Are they able to, create a little bit of a spontaneous message that's more than 1 word? And then moving to program 2, looking at all those things, and at the end of the period, comparing and contrasting, which one were they more spontaneous with? Which one did they use more language functions? Or, depending on your timing, sometimes you might have to try both programs in one session. And again, you're looking at the same thing. But, I'm trying not to change up things too fast because, you're looking at a brand new thing. It's not like you went to algebra the first day and you understood everything from just seeing it one time. So keeping that in mind, that we need to introduce it, really be modeling. And then again, don't be afraid to try something new or different, just because you may be working with a student who everyone has said, oh, I've tried that, it didn't work. Don't be afraid you can still try something. Maybe it wasn't the right time for that student. Maybe they weren't interested. Maybe, some other skills. Maybe they were really working on their motor skills and they didn't quite, buy into that AAC. But just having it available is really helpful. And then also, just one thing I do want to mention is when you are trialing, keep in mind your grid size. You don't have to go too small. Go as big as you possibly can, unless you know that the person has some visual deficits, in which case then maybe you might have to go with a bigger icon. But generally, the bigger your grid, the less navigation, the easier it is to find a word and make a message quicker. So when you're trialing things, try and make sure you're trialing as big of a grid as you possibly can. And then when you're trialing two programs, make sure that the levels that they're on, if you're using a program that has multiple levels, are kind of the same. So you don't want to be trialing one program with, say, 20 icons versus one with 100. Try and meet them in the middle, maybe like 60 and 75, so as close as they possibly can. And I know different programs might have grids in different ways, but just trying to get them as close as possible so that it's not just, okay, that icon is so huge, it's easy for them to get to.
We did have a question come in. What would you trial for our complex, high support needs students who are in very early development, like maybe pre-linguistic, not yet consistently responding to auditory or visual stimuli, and and not yet imitating actions or sounds?
Sure. So if they are able to use their hands, obviously any type of board or device can work. If they're really early learners and you think, hey, having all of the words available on the screen is difficult, you can always use masking. So hiding some of those words, a lot of the programs have masking built in to them now. If you're using a light tech board, take some painter's tape and just cover them, or cover it with a Post-it note or a black piece of paper. If access is an issue, you're not sure if they're going to be using their hands, their eyes, things like that, I would look into partner-assisted scanning. This is one of my favorite methods. People always joke with me that I use partner-assisted scanning like every day to give anyone an option. But basically, you are providing the visual and auditory scan of choices or messages that they could say, and then working with people to identify what the agreed upon response is. So some people, you might say, do you want to play the music, stop the music, or something different? And you're looking to see if they blink. If that's the agreed upon thing, maybe they look to the side, maybe they raise their hand a little bit, or maybe they vocalize. So those are some ways that you can introduce it to some of our early learners who are still learning to use their bodies, still learning new vocabulary. And like I said, partner-assisted scanning is a great way to introduce vocabulary, especially vocabulary that you might not use often.
Can we go back to the grid size?
Sure.
I found that the sole reason that many parents will give AAC another try with their child is because I am willing to change the grid size. I make larger buttons for the child for a short period of time while they get acquainted and quickly allow access to more buttons per page. And then moving on with that, when do you usually change the grid size? What are you looking for when it's time to change the grid size?
Sure. So like I said, I try to go as big as I can from the get-go, and I'm always having conversations with caregivers and support staff that one of the reasons why I want as big of a grid as possible is there's less navigation. So sometimes I'll say to them, okay, we're going to use the smaller grid and we're going to try and find this word, and counting how many buttons it takes to get there. And then we'll go to the larger grid and say, okay, how much longer? So I might talk to them and say, it was a lot faster on the larger grid. Thinking about if your child gets frustrated, it might be a lot easier. There's less frustration. And then I also want them to know that, yes, we could start smaller. And of course, if that's the best way that you can get buy-in, definitely do that. Sometimes we have to make a decision that might not be the best vocab at that moment, but it's the best way to get communication partners involved, which is also going to have long-term benefits. But you just have to explain, the motor plan might change a little bit, and then that can be a little bit difficult. But if you just have those consistent conversations with the people who are the communication partners, and also the people that you're working with, the actual AAC users, have so much great information for you. A lot you can, hold up two devices, two light tech boards and say, which one did you like best? And 99.9% of the time when I ask someone that, they always pick the one that I would have recommended anyway. And then sometimes I'll even show them with two different grid sizes and say, which one did you like? And the majority of the time they'll go for the larger grid. And that's very powerful for some of these, communication partners who are not so sold on the grid size with it being bigger.
Another question about KeyGuard. Do you use KeyGuard often?
Sometimes I do use KeyGuard. Sometimes I'll also use a touch guide. So, sometimes you might have it exactly around each key, but sometimes you might have it be a smaller hole than the actual key. So they have to get to a specific spot. I do sometimes use KeyGuards. It really just depends on the student. There are also some other access settings that you can change if you don't have a KeyGuard readily available. You could try dwell time and release time. So dwell means you're adjusting how long a person has to have their hand or their eyes directly on the icon before it activates. And then release time is, how long it has to be released before you can activate another button, because we have some people who are tapping either purposely because they want to tap or stim or regulate or hear a word, or maybe part of their disability is a tremor or some kind of spastic movement, so they can't help that they hit it a few times. So those are some things that you can think of. Another thing that's helped me a lot this year, I've gotten so into this, is trying out increasing the button margin. So that's usually in your settings, and basically it widens the gap between your icons. It gives the illusion of a bigger border almost, kind of like a visual key guard. So that's something that you can try if you don't have access to a key guard. You could also use wiki sticks, which are like these pieces of string that are covered in wax. And sometimes I've laid those over a device or, used it to make a little square around our target word for the day. That makes it a little bit easier. And I've seen people, make key guards on the go out of like rubber bands. So there are so many things you can try if you don't have access to a key guard right at that moment and you need to try it out.
Wow, that's great. I think how long is your trialing period?
So that's one thing that kind of will depend also on how your facility or school system does things. But if for my caseload, I trial for a few weeks, and I always let a parent know, from the get-go, I have a lot of AAC supports that I use throughout my sessions. I'm going to be trialing some things with them. And, please feel free to zoom into a session, come see a session so you can see what this looks like and see it in action. And then I always want to get at least a week to 2 weeks of really good data for each of the programs that when I'm personally trialing them with my personal students. But sometimes it is like so quick and fast. Like they just show me, I don't want to use that other program. Like this makes sense to me. I'm also lucky that in the school that I work with, we have predominantly all AAC users. My coworkers and I are like so obsessed with AAC. We're constantly supporting our teachers with it. So our teachers are pretty comfortable if we're like, hey, do you mind letting them trying out this in the classroom and just letting me know which ones works out the best? Or I'm going to let you borrow my iPad for the day. Can you just let me know? When I'm supporting teams, usually that's part of a formal evaluation process. So it does make it we have to go a little bit faster because we have to finish it between that evaluation window. But also keep in mind, sometimes it can take a while to determine. And if you're going the insurance route, definitely don't worry if you're taking a long time, because you want to make sure you're finding something for the student. So there was a student that I did go the insurance route for, and the family, that's what they wanted to do. And I think it took us a school year and a half to figure out what works best for the student. But this was a student with multiple disabilities. We had access issues. So we tried every access method under the sun, but family was so involved, and it was really great to get their perspective and have them say, that's the method, like that's what we think is working best for her. So, I'm sure that was a very vague response, but it kind of depends on your facility and the student or adult that you're supporting. And, sometimes you'll get to that answer very quickly because they'll let you know.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Where do we go now? Reviewing dynamic assessment tools.
Sure. Yeah.
Then get into planning intervention. I know we want to know all the techniques. We need all the secrets.
Yes. So dynamic assessment, of course, you're using it in all aspects of your practice, but it is so important during AAC, especially because we can look at so many things. Before, I was talking about those competence areas, the core competences. So your social competence, your linguistic competence, operational, strategic, and now the psychosocial. So a lot of our dynamic assessment tools really take those into account. And so many of them are free online, which is amazing because that makes it really quick and easy to do. You can print them easily, save them on your computer. You can even forward it to other caregivers and communication partners to get their input. So some of the ones that I personally recommend and use frequently include the DAG3. So that stands for the Dynamic AAC Goals Grid, and it's on its 3rd edition. It was created by Toby Dynavox. And basically, they go through all of the core competency areas, looking at different skills. You can check off if they've met that goal, if it's, they're still making progress toward it, or they haven't even started it yet. You can even check off what types of prompts they need for different skills. And it also goes by emergent transitional, context dependent, all the way up to independent. So there are 5 different levels within each competence area. And what I love about this is you can do it as many times during the year as you want. And also it's so great for helping develop goals because you can it's helpful for the wording. And then if somebody asks, why did you think of that goal? I can go back and show them, this is, research-based, we're looking at all the competences, and this is one of the areas that we need to work on. So that one is free and you can find it online. So
and that was, sorry. And I want to say that was DAG, DAG3. Okay.
DAG3.
Oh, 2 Gs.
2 Gs. Okay. And I can also type that in the chat too.
DAGG3. Oh, thanks.
Yes. The DAG3.
Oh, I love it. Do you mind going over those competencies, and then I will type those into the chat too?
So one competency is the social competency. So how you are using language. Are you using it to request? Are you using it to protest? Are you using it in a turn-taking situation? That type of thing. Linguistic looks more at, what vocabulary you're using, any morphemes you're using, semantic relations, things like that. The operational competence is how are you using the system? Are you able to adjust the volume? Do you know to take it from area to area? Do you know how to charge it if it is broken or something like that? And then strategic is looking more at, will you switch communication methods if you're not understood? How would you repair communication breakdown? These are all things that when they come together, make you a very strong communicator. So that's why we're looking at those areas. And then, like I said, the psychosocial competence is a newer one that they've added in recent years. So it's not always included on these dynamic assessment tools, but you do want to think about how the person using AAC views their AAC use. Like, do they love using it? Are they indifferent? Does it make them upset that they have to use it? And trying to support, positive relationship with their AAC use and communication partners.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to get those in there.
Sure. Is it okay if I talk about some other dynamic assessment tools that I use?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So the next one that I like to use, especially, I really recommend this for people who work with older students or adults, is also from Toby Dynavox. It's called the Toby Dynavox Augmentative and Alternative Communication Needs Assessment. So I'm going to take that in our chat right now.
I think I got it.
So this one is, you really want to fill this out with either the person, my autocorrect just changed the name. Okay, there we go, Dynavox. You want to fill this out with the person who uses AAC or some really close communication partners, because basically you're looking at where do they need support? You know, is it in the community? Is it at home? Is it in specific therapy areas? And then looking at, you know, how often do you feel like you're able to efficiently communicate in XYZ environment? How often do you think you're able to communicate requests efficiently? That type of thing. And you can develop some goal areas. So you're looking at, you know, all the time, some of the time, rarely, that type of rating scale. And then again, that can help you choose your goal areas. And I personally think that this is great for some older students because it's really looking at community participation. So not that younger students don't participate in the community, but really looking at, you know, how can they be more independent?
And for those that are listening not live, I just want to say that this one is the Dynavox Augmentative and Alternative Communication Needs Assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, and I don't have a handout, but if you, Carolyn, do you share the reference list with people?
Oh, we can, absolutely. We can.
So if you ended up sharing the reference list, all of these are in the references, and then you'll also be able to see some of the articles that I constantly go back to just for, you know, some refreshers on the different competences or things like that.
Great. Another question was, do you use the communication matrix?
That was going to be one of my next ones. So the communication matrix is also online. It used to be free, but it is still very low cost. And basically it is a list of questions that you answer, you know, do you feel that the individual is able to get their needs met, you know, with whatever type of communication modality. And then it'll go through, how do they request more of something? Is it moving their body? Is it nodding yes? Things like that. And after all is said and done, you get this beautiful little graph that is colored in white, yellow, orange, and gray based on if things are not seen, emerging, mastered, or completely surpassed. And you're looking at communication from 7 levels, from pre-intentional communication all the way up to language when you're starting to combine. And it makes such a great visual for different people on your team, because you can say, hey, look, you know, they're really solid using unconventional communication methods. So body movements, things like that. Let's try and get them up to the next level. Or, hey, I see that they're doing a lot of independent requesting, but I would like to see them protesting. So let's work on protesting and refusing. And this is great to do year after year. I love to show parents, you know, look what they did last year and look how many colored boxes we have now. Like I said, it's pretty low cost. You do get a certain amount of free evaluation. So sometimes you can recommend a family make their own login, and then they get, like, I think 5 free assessments. So you could log into their thing and help them fill it out. What I do with my coworkers is we all just split the cost. So we pay, I think it's like $25 for a year, and then you get a certain amount of assessments, and then you just buy credits for more assessments. So when one of us goes on and notices, hey, you know, we're out of assessments, they'll be like, hey, I'm just going to add $20 in assessments left on it. And that works for us. Depending on your facility, you might be able to ask them to pay for it for you, but it is such a great tool. It is worth every penny, and it's pretty low cost considering things.
Yeah, sorry. Julia asked a question and I gave her I was silly and I put in the wrong what she was asking for. She was asking I know. Sorry, that was silly. She was that. So you were just going over the communication matrix. I had to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. 3 other ones you should think about too. Another free one, the quad profile. This is a free tool that will look at your morphology, semantics, syntax, and basically just a checklist. Hey, they use these words, they use these types of semantic relationships, they're using agent plus action type of sentences. Super easy, great way to look back and say, okay, in this period of time, they've learned this much because they have like 5 different check areas on it. And it's super simple. So that's QUAD profile, quad profile. I'd also look into the ALP for AAC.
I didn't hear that
So
one.
that I'm going to type it into the chat,
Okay.
the ALP for AAC. So that stands for the assessment of learning process for AAC. And this is really great if you are working with people who are using different access methods, because it's helping you separate the communication task from the motor task of, say, using eye gaze or switch scanning. And it really looks at, what is their attention to the task? Were they excited by it, interested, just not interested at all? Are they starting to fine tune the movements? Are they thinking of it as a tool? So that's a really great thing to look at. That is free. It's really just a rubric to kind of think about, but I do sometimes include it in reports. When we first introduced it, they were at a level 1 and from there on. And then my last dynamic assessment tool that I like to use is the AAC profile. That was developed by Tracy Kovac. And this is an assessment that you do have to buy. And it has, the little manual and the grading sheet. But you're able to do 3 assessments on 1 manual for 1 person. And again, it looks at all of the different competence areas. And you kind of get a score from 1 to 3. You give them a score 1 to 3. Are they doing something rarely, sometimes, all the time? And then getting an idea of if they're an emergent communicator, a transitional, context dependent, that type of thing. And that's, again, really great to go back on. That one gets a little bit technical. So I think that's one that you would keep in the file just for you and other SLPs to kind of look back on. Of course, you can show it to people, but I do think that's a little bit more technical of one. You don't get like a pretty graph. It's not as easy on the eyes in that sort of way.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to go back for those that are going to be listening to that's not live. I wanted just to say the last 2 that you mentioned was ALP for AAC, assessment of learning process for AAC, and then the last one was the AAC profile. Just want to make sure everybody got perfect.
And like I said, I love all of these because you're always going back to that communicative competence model, and it's really easy to develop what goal areas you want to target and create a solid toolbox where the people we're supporting are able to communicate whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want.
Right. I love it. Well, I know that we are all on the edge of our seats knowing we want to know how you incorporate AAC into your therapy sessions.
Sure. So like I said, I always have AAC supports available in my therapy area. I have posters, and you can get them from all of the device companies. Your reps are happy to send them. So I put them back to back so I can flip them easily when a student comes in based on what they're trialing or what they're using. I have light tech boards, I have my iPad. If they have their own iPad and it's out too, we just have so much so that we can use whatever. And then I love to follow my students' interests. We all know that's the hot topic now is connection over compliance, and connection is where you get that spontaneous communication. So I try to do a lot of play-based therapy because I do work with younger students. When I'm, doing an assessment with older students, I'm trying to find whatever topic or hip thing they want to talk about. They are all more hip than I am. I don't know the slang. I don't know all the things that they, so I'm always like, what's up? But they're excited to teach me about it. So that's something that we can do during our sessions. And then I love to get into the classroom as much as I can and either co-treat with another profession or do a lesson together. Something that has been really fun that we've been doing at my school for the past 2 years is we pick a book that is going to be the basis of our lessons. And every SLP in our building does it. We all serve different classes, but once a week we go into that class We read the book with everybody. Everybody is modeling. We pick out 4 words that are the words that we're focusing on. And then we do an associated activity as like a little extension where they get to practice the word a little bit more naturally. And we developed this after looking at PRC Saltillo's literacy planner. So they have one, they usually make one every year. I'm going to type it in the chat. So PRC Saltillo is one of the device companies. They make accents, Unity vocabulary, LAMP vocabulary, Touch Chat, Nova Chats, things like that. And they made this literacy planner, which is amazing. So they have a month. Every month they pick a book. They have your core words for you, exactly what you should model, and it's free.
Wow.
Amazing. So
All right,
you
people,
can send, you can share it
PRC.
with their teachers. You can share it with parents. Like sometimes we'll print out little pieces of it and say, you know, this is what we're doing. But we were really inspired by it. And so now we just can choose our own books and kind of think of what craft goes with it, what cooking activity, a science project. And everybody in the class loves it. The kids love it and the staff love it because it's such a low pressure way for them to get involved with modeling. You know, we build in everybody today, here are our core words. This is the words we're going to practice. All right, everybody, this is how you're going to find the device, the word on this type of device. This is how you're going to find it on this type of device. All right, everybody, of course, we want all the adults to practice. Now we want all the students to practice. And when the students are practicing, it's a chance for our staff to practice modeling. And then because I'm in there, I can show them how I model, how I provide wait time, you know, how I'm phrasing questions to the students, which are more open-ended, so that it's a little bit more spontaneous communication. So that is a tool that I love. The PRC Saltillo also makes a calendar that has a theme for the year. So they've done a science one that I shared with one of my teachers who loves to do science experiments with the kids. So she got so into it and did all of the science experiments, followed the script exactly. And she was like, this makes using AAC so easy. And I was like, exactly, like this is what, and so that's another free tool. You can also look into Assistiveware. Assistiveware is Core Word Classroom. That gives you some ideas of how to use different core words. And again, free, you can share it with different communication partners. So all this to say, my therapy sessions look like a mix of child-led therapy where we're doing fun things, and then also some pre-planned activities, especially when I'm in the classroom, that I can show off how we're using different core words and different techniques that I can then send the activity home to the families.
Awesome.
And you know what? The internet's your friend. I'm sure if you type in, I need an idea for this random topic that we're doing at school, I'm sure that you can find it either on a blog or somebody's Instagram and things like that. There are just so many exciting ways to get people into AAC. But if you are excited about it, you go into that therapy session, you are hyped up. I'm sure whoever you are with is going to get so excited too. And you'll get so much buy-in, you'll get spontaneous communication. Just keep smiling, keep trying. You know, Dory from Finding Nemo says, just keep swimming, just keep going. It's okay. If you are met with dead silence and you're the only one using the AAC, I promise within time, everyone will be doing it.
I love it. I think I think there is a lot of need on really trying to get the staff and the caregivers all on board and the buy-in. I think the resources that you've been giving us are fantastic, especially all the free ones. I'm really excited I'm going to go type into the PRC literacy planner. That's intriguing to me. And I love the fact that
they actually have one for middle school students too. The literacy planner does have one here for middle school students. I've never used that one because my kids are a little bit too young, but they have little chapter books like Anne of Green Gables is on there, and they even explain, you know, like how you can read it with your older students. It's like a book club type of vibe for them. So there is an option for older students with the literacy planner, but that's like my number one thing. I can always find something to do.
Oh, that's great. Oh, we do have a question. It's a little long. I'm gonna paraphrase it just a little bit, but he was indicating that he's got students that are cognitively performing very young, maybe 1 to 6 months. And he's seen that SLPs and team members have kind of disagreed whether a student is using language intentional versus just a pattern of behavior. Can you share any thoughts on how you interpret and share language performance?
Sure. So definitely, I feel like this comes up frequently, like, oh, they didn't really mean that, stuff like that. And, who's to say that they didn't really mean that unless they tell you that, That's the thing, is that we don't know what's in their brain. No one knows what's in anyone else's brain. So I do like to, explain to people who say that, I'm always attributing meaning. I am always assuming that what someone said is what they meant to say, unless they show me otherwise. And I'm acknowledging all different communication methods that they're doing. And also thinking back to language development, traditional language development for people who are typically developing, they're babbling, they're making all sorts of sounds, they're saying words over and over. So I have a 2-year-old, the amount of times he says choo-choo, even though there's not a choo-choo around, or he's talking about trucks just over and over, trucks, 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 there's no trucks. But he means it. And, we all just assume, oh, he wants to talk about trucks. So thinking about that with our students who, have cognitive impairments, who have different disabilities, they might really mean what they say. They're also, every time they're doing things that we might think are not intentional, that's them developing their motor plan, learning where words are, learning how to use their bodies, and they're learning from our reaction. So they know, okay, if I keep saying milk, someone's eventually going to get me milk. And maybe they said it 100 times, even though milk is not around, because they just want to drink. And so sometimes you have to, put your thinking cap on and think, why are they saying milk 1,000,000 times? Or, it's their students getting really tired. They've done a lot of really high intensity work. They did great. And then they just keep saying, Paw Patrol. And, maybe they're just telling you they need a break and they're ready for something a little bit more fun. So I know that's such a tough mentality to shift, but I really just try to give use myself as an example. So when my students are saying something like that, I always acknowledge it. Maybe I'll say to them, I know you're really talking about that right now. I keep hearing you say that word. Right now, I'm not thinking about that. So if you're thinking about that, that's fine. But every time you say it, I don't have much else to say to you, like, I'm going to be talking about this with everybody, or I'm trying to talk about this, or can we try and figure out a way that we can talk about that? That's the whole reason we communicate, is because we want to talk about something together. So maybe they just are looking for something to talk about with you. And like all kids, especially if they're, younger kids, or, developmentally wise, we think that they might be performing younger. They just want to talk about what they want to talk about. And to be quite honest, I'm an adult, and you know what? I want to talk about AAC 99% of the time. So, you just got to let them do it.
Hey, we got one more question. So here we go. Anonymous says, even after long-term trials, many of their students are not responsive to robust high devices. What factors would influence your decision to recommend light or mid-tech over a dynamic display high-tech device? Great question.
Sure. Certainly, if it is the student's preference, in those situations, I would definitely be taking data, whether it's, paper and pen or just in your brain. How are they doing with some of the light tech supports, like a paper-based system? I've certainly worked with kids who are just so amazing at using the paper-based, and they're just like, I don't want this. I'm good here. If it's their personal preference and they feel confident, definitely go with that. We always want to honor the person's choice in how they want to communicate, what they want to use. The other thing is, if they're just also very independent, you can also even say, at this time, I really want us to focus on using XYZ system, but still giving opportunities for high tech. So maybe when you're in a group setting, the high tech is available for them to explore, but then they have their own dedicated light tech system that can be with them throughout the day. So they're still getting exposure in case they change their minds. And, you can always do a light tech option that looks a lot like a high-tech option because you could print out boards, you could print out every page from one of the boards and, put them in a binder. So that's one way that you can do it. And I hope that answered that question. But it's very, depending on the person, and again, it sounds like you just really want them to have access to something. And if that's what they're using right now, you do sometimes have to meet them where they're at. You want them to be motivated to use it. And if they're just not motivated to use something high tech, they're not using it, they don't feel confident, it seems difficult for them, meet them where they're at, and then you're developing that language, they're getting so much vocabulary, they're able to practice interacting, maybe they'll have more opportunities to use it, and then eventually you can revisit high tech.
Wait, I think on the flip side of, I think maybe how to support your recommendation.
Oh, okay.
Light or mid over a high, because I think, I don't blame a parent saying, no, I want the fancy,
right,
most expensive, because, I want.
Of course, everybody wants the best for their child or the person they're supporting. I think you're just going to go back to that data saying like, look how spontaneous they are with this. Look how independent they are. This is their autonomous communication. Whereas with the other program, and this goes for whether you're comparing high tech or high tech and light tech. Whereas with the other program, it is every single utterance is from a direct model. Every single utterance is with so much wait time, or they're pushing it away. Those types of things you can write in a report or use as justification. And something I wanted to mention, as much as you can, getting caregivers or other team members to attend your evaluation sessions or your therapy sessions so they can see AAC in action, how you are interacting with AAC and modeling and providing wait time and using open-ended questions in action. And then they'll also see, oh, okay, wait, they did so much in this area. They wanted to talk about this. I should really be talking about this more. Or, oh, wow, I see that program number 1 is really such a better fit because I see what they're doing. Like they can make a sentence much faster or communicate a short message to me very quickly.
Right. So, I mean, I think what you're saying is you're recommending, if you are recommending mid or light, it is because that is their mode right now. But I think also to say that might not be where they stay.
Of course. Yes, you always want to say, and even if they are using high tech, I always let families know this is it's dynamic. We can be changing so many things all the time. There are times that you're going to go up a grid size because it's what you want to do. Maybe you have to shift to a program that has a keyboard right on the homepage because they're getting so good at spelling and they're using spelling all the time to support their communication. We're always looking, how can we make it better? So right now they might be using that light tech system and you're constantly looking, how can we make this better? How can we make this better? And it might be, after a year, what's making it better is that shift to high tech. But for some students, it might take a little bit longer of time. You're just constantly assessing what is meeting their strengths and supporting their needs.
Right. Data.
Right. I know. Our favorite thing.
I know. Well, I can't believe that it's coming to an end.
I know. I could talk about it forever.
I know. I want you to keep going. But Kate, you have been an amazing guest. Thank you so much. I really hope that you will come back and visit with us again. I mean, I love your resources. I'll make sure that the references are available too. I think that's powerful, but everybody wants those free, Yes. Those free resources were wonderful. So thank you so much.
You guys were so amazing. Thank you so much for letting me talk your ears off about AAC. I love doing it, and I hope you're all just as excited. And if you ever have any questions or want to learn a little bit more, you can follow me on Instagram at AAC with Kate. So I'm going to drop that in the chat.
Put that in there. AAC with Kate. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thanks for
joining us on today's podcast. Remember to go to speechtherapypd.com to learn more about earning ASHA CEUs. We appreciate your positive reviews and support and would love for you to write a quick review and subscribe. If you have indicated that you are part of the ASHA registry and entered both your ASHA number and a complete address in your account profile prior to the course completion, we will submit earned CEUs to ASHA. Please allow 1 to 2 months from the completion date for your CEUs to be reflected on your ASHA transcript. For our School of Speech listeners, we have a special coupon code to receive $20 off any annual subscription to speechtherapypd.com. Head over there to get ASHA CEUs for listening to this podcast and all other episodes. The code is SCHOOL20. That is SCHOOL20. Hope to see you on our next episode. Also, please don't hesitate to tell us which topics you would like us to cover in future episodes. To get in touch, drop us a line in the comment section or send us a message on social media.